But if you think about it, everything is chemical. All that we are, we're just chemical reactions firing off all over the place and creating this. Everything. Life, good and bad, happiness, sadness, everything. All these simple structures of atoms moving together make a sort of a trace that runs through life and creates a story. Our story. Everybody's story. And one tiny little thing, one tiny little molecular variation can be the difference between beauty and passion and joy or death. Look at, say, sodium and chloride. Separately, they're deadly. One whiff of chloride and you're gone.
Okay, so the DMT scene. Towards the end of January, we began to work on the DMT movement scene, and we found a useful technique provided by Anne Bogart called the soft focus technique, and we adapted it in order to help build the ensemble. For this technique, we got the ensemble to walk around the space and to use their soft focus by not focusing on anything in particular, but also not looking at each other. We then asked them to react to a certain emotion by moving however they wanted. For example, with anger, they moved fast-paced, were very rigid, and had certain paths, whereas when we gave them the word love, they wandered slowly, gracefully, with lots of fluent arm movements. We then related the words to our piece and asked them to move as if they were blood flowing through the body, or a neuron travelling through a synapse. We then got them to each concentrate on one person by using their soft focus and not looking directly at them, and try and keep them in their peripheral vision at all times whilst they walked around the space. We wanted the ensemble to represent parts of the brain. Also wanted them to represent neuron transmitters sending signals throughout the body, and chemical reactions and elements throughout the course of the scene. So by doing these exercises, we actually got them to understand the importance of fluidity throughout. They must be constantly moving, as if they were in the body. These exercises also inspired the ensemble to produce true reactions to the words. For our next exercise, we got the ensemble into pairs and asked them to physically represent certain organs. So, for example, we got them to represent the heart, the lungs, a system of nerves, and the brain, and then show them back to the group to see if we liked any of their movements to help us develop the scene. We knew that we wanted a physical representation of the brain, so this exercise really was just a warm-up to help their creativity flow. So we eventually asked them to break out of pairs and to try and form a brain together, and what the outcome was actually the brain that we used in the production. So during one rehearsal in the beginning of February, we set aside an hour in which to split the room. Pippa took Dan and Charlotte to work on the naturalistic monologue part of the scene, whilst Sarah took the ensemble to work on the physical movement. For the hour, I flicked from group to group, providing help, techniques and movement ideas to both Sarah and Pippa. And for the remaining hour, we came together and showed them a rough version of the scene. But I then realised that we had to pick out key words for the ensemble to actually move on. Their cue words. So we got Dan to read through the monologue whilst we picked certain words that were poignant for our ensemble. For example, once they had formed the brain, we wanted them to react to Dan's line, the ventral tegmental area, in which I suggested that they open their hands and move them about. We then chose the line switches into gear for the brain to come alive, and for the ensemble to stand up and react on the word flooded to represent dopamine. This was an ongoing process, and we came back to it many times. We tried to represent as many words as possible that we thought were important during Ben's monologue. For example, the part of the monologue that focuses on love, we got the ensemble to hold a hand over their heart and move together to represent love. and we also got them to split into duets, which we actually loosely based on the tango, because we thought that'd be a good way to show the love relationship between the pairs. During another rehearsal, we wanted to form what looked like a chemical symbol using the ensemble, as well as forming geometrical patterns for sodium and chloride that form salt. So that's where we got the very static moves from. Not static, intricate moves. And at the very end of the DMT scene, we actually wanted the ensemble to come together to represent a sort of tunnel of light here.
Assemble again. Sorry. Great. Assemble. Great. Assemble.